Center for the Ethiopian Educational Information and Communication Technology presents Educational Satellite Television Programs.
Hello, teacher. Hello, students. Welcome to today's lesson on graphing trigonometric functions. You have already learned about the basic trigonometric functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. They are used to identify the relationship between the angles of a triangle and the lengths of the sides of the triangle. But what do these functions look like on a graph? In this lesson and the next lesson, we will learn how to graph the sine, cosine, and tangent. Today, we will start with the graph of the sine function. Do you remember what the sine is? The sine of an angle is the ratio of the length of the opposite side to the length of the hypotenuse of a right-angled triangle. But before we draw the graph of the sine function, we first need to determine the sine values. In a previous lesson, you learned how to find the sine of different angles, which you must do before you make your graph. Do you remember how to do that? Please take a moment now to calculate the sine values of the angles in the table on the screen. Once you have completed this activity, we will learn how to plot those points on a graph. Go ahead.
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
Welcome back, students. Now that we have our sign values, we need to plot them onto our graph. To draw the sign graph, we mark the values of the angle on the horizontal axis and the values of y on the vertical axis. We then draw a smooth curve between all the points. Now, I want you to recreate that graph on your own paper. It should be easy, right? Let us see. Now, draw a graph on your paper and number the horizontal axis and the y-axis. Then, please plot the sign points yourself along the horizontal axis from minus 360 to plus 360. Good luck!
Students, let's get ready. Begin. Time's up. Let's get back to our lesson.
How did you do, students? Does your graph look like this one? If so, good for you. You see how we mark the values of the angle on the horizontal axis and the values of y on the vertical axis. The curve that these points create is very interesting. Do you know why? Can anybody figure it out? Did you notice that the curve on the left side of the graph is exactly the same as on the right side of the graph? If you did, good for you. That is because after a complete revolution around a circle, which is always 360 degrees, the values of the sine function repeat themselves. So, that means the curve will always repeat the same way every time. The end point of a circle is the same as its beginning. That is why in your sine values, 0 is equal to negative 360, 0, and plus 360. When a function repeats its values at regular intervals, it is called a periodic function. A sine function repeats after 360 degrees, or 2 pi radians. So, 360 degrees, or 2 pi, is called the period of the sine function. Do you see how the curve repeats in this figure? That is the period. Now we will talk about domain and range. For any angle taken from a circle, there is a point on its terminal side. Remember, the terminal side is the ray where the measurement of an angle stops. The domain of the sine function is the set of all real numbers that allow the function formula to work. When finding the domain, remember the denominator, or the bottom of a fraction, cannot be 0. The values under a square root sign must be positive. Also, the range of the sine function is never less than -1 or greater than 1. Please look through your textbook for more information on domain and range. They are tricky concepts, but if you spend time to master them, the more complicated functions of trigonometry will not seem so difficult. That's all for this lesson, students. By now, you should know how to graph the sine function. Next lesson, we will learn how to graph the cosine function. You might prepare for this lesson by reviewing how to find the cosine values. because you will have to do that in future activities. Until next time, thank you, teacher. Thank you, students.